Hi, I'm Ray McAllister, editor of Boomer Magazine, and we're here with Harvey Newquist, executive director of the National Guitar Museum, which is the basis for the exhibit Guitar, the Instrument That Rocked the World at the Science Museum of Virginia. Welcome, Harvey.
Thank you.
You've also got an extensive guitar background. I know you were editor of Guitar Magazine
Yes.
for quite some time. You're as expert as anybody we will ever find on the guitar. So let me ask you now, it's time for you to own up. First of all, who are your favorite guitarists? Let's start with that.
All right, well, since I'm the expert, and I'm really not, I just know a little bit about guitars, let's start with you. Who are your favorite guitarists?
Oh, boy, I'm a ton.
You're representing everybody who's watching this. You have to own up for these
name
people.
every single one. Well, I mean, the obvious ones, I think. I mean, going back to the days of the Yardbirds, I mean, that was the guitar group early on. And, of course, all those people went elsewhere. But Eric Clapton, you have to name Clapton very early.
Sure.
Because I was such a Beatles nut, George Harrison. And I think he's generally recognized as a great guitarist. The Beatles themselves weren't necessarily great musicians, but Harrison was. And you were playing earlier in one of our earlier segments, little opening chords to a million songs that we all loved. And we mentioned I Feel Fine in one of the segments, which was very good. I think those are the ones. I'm such a British invasion guy that you know. I mean, we've talked about the Kinks and the Animals. I don't know if we talked about them, but that whole group, the Stones, Keith Richards, everything in that era is really what my background is. Now,
See, you're as much of an expert as I am.
Oh, that's what no, I
just you went through the right. It's funny because prior to the Boomers, and the British invasion really did change everything. You had some great guitarists who overlapped into our generation. You had Chet Atkins, who's widely regarded as being perhaps the greatest fingerstyle guitarist in history. You had Muddy Waters, who's a great blues guitarist. You know, prior to them, you had jazz guitarists like Charlie Christian. But you're right, the Boomers really are defined by the British invasion. And you have kind of this trilogy of guys who are in the Yardbirds. You had Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, and Jeff Beck, all of whom really set the bar.
Right.
And the fourth member of that sort of group was Jimi Hendrix, who sonically took the guitar places nobody else had simply by, well, I shouldn't say simply, but by turning the volume up so far and then manipulating the sounds themselves. Not always the way he played, but how he controlled the sounds. Going forward, if you're asking me the people that I found important, I think Jimmy Page, perhaps, while not the most skilled guitarist, and I think most people would agree that today the most skilled rock guitarist is Jeff Beck, but Jimmy Page wrote songs for the guitar that haven't dated much at all. You can go back and listen to almost any Led Zeppelin song, perhaps with the exception of Stairway to Heaven, and really feel...
Which is played every 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think just the royalty checks from the radio alone are keeping him very very happy. But Page wrote music that's sort of not quite epic in scope, but very expansive, and took the guitar in interesting directions. So you had those guys, and then there's a generation of people that either were right about that time or followed them. You had Ritchie Blackmore from Deep Purple and Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, and guys who are now our age, Boomers who, like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, who appeal also to the next generation because they're still out there touring all the time. We haven't even talked about, country western or jazz guys like Al DiMeola and Pat Metheny and country guys, new guys like Brad Paisley and Keith Urban. They're all great guitarists. So there's still people who play and play very well. So to try and narrow it down becomes sort of like, who's your favorite sports team? There's no right answer, but there's a lot of great ones to choose from.
Which guitar songs to you are the most iconic?
Well, I think everybody has to say "Smoke on the Water" because that's banned in most music stores. I think there's probably a few. There's a theme song to James Bond movies, which
I
is
hadn't even thought of that, right.
Which we actually determined was the most heard guitar riff in history because of the number of
We
times.
being Guitar Magazine?
Being Guitar Museum.
Oh, okay.
Have determined that more people have probably heard that around the world than any other guitar riff, simply because of the nature of the Bond franchise. And
That's
how many
interesting.
times, because it's always played, and their 23rd movie or something.
Right, just
and you hear that
coming out. Sure.
dun. That was actually played by Vic Flick, who we had toured for a while with his guitar. A wonderful session player who now lives out in Las Vegas and is retired from that. But Smoke on the Water, certainly by Deep Purple, written by Ritchie Blackmore. Stairway to Heaven, Satisfaction by the Stones, perhaps in terms of the British invasion, not only one of the simplest songs to play, but one of the most immediately recognizable. And there are thousands and thousands of songs that the guitar launched, and that's why there are so many different bands and people who want to play in bands, because you can be influenced by any number of those songs.
Our daughter has a dog that she named Layla.
I'm sure Eric Clapton would be proud.
Right, he gets no royalties from that, but from everything else he does.
Clapton is one of the few who still tours regularly. He has a festival that he puts on every few years where he invites lots of guitarists together, and perhaps we come from a generation where people say Clapton is God, which shows how our generation revered guitar players. And Clapton is one of the few, as I said, who still tours regularly, and has made his fame and fortune simply by being associated with the guitar.
Well, and he was very well known before he began singing.
Right.
I mean, he was known as a guitarist.
Yes, he was. And he'd played in the Yardbirds, and he'd played with John Mayall, and then with Cream, when people started hearing his voice, he was kind of the entire package. So he's almost as much as anybody today the face for non-guitarists, for people who appreciate the guitar as an instrument. I'd say Eric is definitely the face of the electric guitar.
Okay, who's your favorite guitarist? You pick one and your favorite song.
I would have to go back to Jimmy Page being my favorite guitarist, and there was a song he wrote on one of the last Led Zeppelin records called Achilles' Last Stand. And one of the reasons I like that is there's a part of the song where there are 14 guitar tracks at one time, overdubbed and overlapped. And if you listen, you can pick out each of the 14 different guitars. And I think it was a really great example of how diverse the instrument could sound all in one place. So that's what I would have to pick. And not a lot of people have heard it, but that's the one
I'm going to pull it out and listen to it.
They'll play it at my funeral.
Thank you so much, Harvey.
Thank you for having me. It was
We've
really
been
fun.
talking with Harvey Newquist, and make sure you get by the Science Museum and see the exhibit.
Thanks.
Thank you.